Let's look at the clown from Dead by Daylight. The clown, real name Kenneth Chase, was born in 1932 by a strenuous labor in which his mother would not survive. This caused his father great anguish, and as Kenneth grew, so did his dad's resentment and dislike towards him, so much so that by the time Kenneth was in school, they had lived mostly separate lives. In school, Kenneth showed great promise and was a star athlete. Growing tall and strong, he excelled at track events but always avoided and turned down any attempts to convince him into team sports. Kenneth developed a fascination and obsession for feathers, often finding them on the road during his walks home from school. He kept a collection inside a cigar box under his bed. He would watch the birds that came to the feeder in his garden and imagine how soft they must be and desired to catch one. He managed to get close enough to the town's dentist to obtain a small amount of anesthetic and set up a trap on the feeder, knocking out a bird long enough for him to be able to touch one. After several failed attempts, he was finally able to catch a robin. He had planned to release it after it had woken from the anesthetic, but as the robin laid in Kenneth's hand, he felt a rush and seen a life that was at his mercy. And once the robin began to regain consciousness and struggle, Kenneth's grip on the bird's neck fastened until the chest feathers were still. He later disposed of the bird and kept a single feather, starting a new collection and discarding of the old ones, which he had now seen as fake. By the late 1940s, Kenneth had started a job working as a busboy at a local diner and moved on to bigger prey such as squirrels, raccoons, and dogs, becoming much more skilled at measuring the correct amount of anesthesia needed to be effective depending on the size of his prey. In early 1954, a young man from the same town Kenneth lived in mysteriously went missing, and the town was turned upside down in the search to find him but never could. A few months after the man went missing, Kenneth's father was doing work in the crawl space under his house when he came across Kenneth's cigar box. He opened it and saw, to his horror, several feathers as well as animal paws and a human finger. And as Kenneth returned home, he saw his father leaving the crawl space with a cigar box and knew that he had been discovered, so without a second thought, he turned heel and ran away, never to return home again. After a few weeks of living rough, he came into contact with a traveling circus that was incredibly impressed with his strength, and he was hired to work the ropes. And when joining the circus, he went by a new name, Jeffrey Hawk. He had now found himself amongst a tight-knit community of people, which meant he needed to learn how to properly socialize. And along with his new name, Jeffrey, he created a new personality and wore it like a disguise, appearing as charming and helpful, and was quickly accepted by his fellow entertainers. Over the course of a decade, he worked with the circus and traveled all over America, but with his new life came many bad habits, and Jeffrey had found himself indulging in drinking, junk food, and other scandalous activities which caused him to gain an unhealthy amount of weight. But his old urges returned to him, and he needed to find a way to resume his true passion, so he would steal makeup and clothes from his fellow performers and adopted a clown persona as a way to get closer to and lure unsuspecting victims, where he would anesthetize them and bring them back to his caravan, and over the course of several hours would torment them physically and mentally, and once they were done away with, he would examine their hands and remove what he believed to be their best or prettiest finger to add to his collection, disposing of the rest of them, which he has seen as pointless waste. He began to remove his costume less and less, and eventually shedded his old personality and fully embraced the clown as his true identity. But with time, he became sloppy, and as a result, one night he passed out from a long evening of drinking, and one of his victims was able to wiggle herself free from her bindings and escape to seek help. Jeffrey then awoke to the rest of the circus bearing down on him, and before he could be caught, he whipped the horse and caravan and vanished into the night. Since then, he's roamed the country, and like a parasite, would always be found close or attached to a carnival or circus, luring those who dared to go near him, and would trap them and move on before they could be found missing. But somewhere along the way, he left the roads of America behind him and moved through a veil of mist to a different realm. And it was in this realm that he had felt more at home than ever before and decided to set up camp, waiting for his next visitor.